She spent years chasing a life that was never really hers. Expectations, obligations, routines. She wore them all like heavy coats in a summer heat. Every smile was a mask. Every day was a silent performance. And deep down, a question kept whispering louder and louder. Is this really what living is supposed to feel like? The world saw her as successful, reliable, always put together. But inside, she felt like a ghost in her own life, moving, speaking, smiling, but barely existing. Have you ever looked around at everything you've built, only to realize it was never built for you in the first place? One quiet afternoon, when no one was watching, she made a decision. She walked away from the expectations, from the noise, from everything she thought she was supposed to be. Not because she had a plan, but because for the first time in her life, she chose to find out who she really was underneath it all. She didn't always feel lost. There was a time when her dreams felt alive, when mornings held promise and nights carried excitement. But somewhere along the way, without even realizing it, she started living by someone else's map. It wasn't sudden, it wasn't dramatic, it was quiet, a small compromise here, a delayed dream there, a smile when she wanted to scream. And before she knew it, her life wasn't hers anymore. It belonged to everyone else. She became the daughter everyone could rely on, the friend who always said yes, the employee who never said no. Promotions came, awards were handed out, and her family beamed with pride. From the outside, it looked like she was winning. But have you ever felt like you're checking every box society handed you, and somehow still feel like something is missing? That's the feeling that followed her everywhere, like a shadow she couldn't outrun. At first, she convinced herself it was just a phase. Everyone feels lost sometimes, right? So she buried herself deeper, into work, into responsibilities, into fixing everyone else's problems. She said yes when she wanted to say no. She volunteered when she desperately needed rest. She smiled at parties when all she wanted was to go home, curl into bed, and breathe. Because deep down, she believed that being tired, stretched thin, and constantly available was just the price of being a good person. Years went by, and the small sacrifices piled up until they became who she was. She couldn't remember the last time she did something purely because it made her heart light up. When was the last time you did something just for you, without guilt? She couldn't answer that question, because somewhere between being needed and being praised for how selfless she was, she had forgotten the sound of her own voice. Worse yet, she wore her exhaustion like a badge of honor. If she was busy, it meant she was valuable. If she was exhausted, it meant she mattered. How often do we convince ourselves that burnout is a sign of success, that being drained is proof we're doing enough? She didn't realize it then, but every yes she gave away chipped a little more of her spirit, until eventually she became a stranger to herself. Inside, a quiet ache was growing. The dreams she once had, traveling to new places, writing her own story, living without apology, started to feel like memories from another lifetime. The scariest part, she wasn't even sure if she deserved them anymore. Who was she to think she could choose herself after all these years of choosing everyone else? And so she kept moving forward, trapped in a life that looked perfect on paper but felt hollow in her heart, smiling, working, giving, until the day came when she could no longer deny the truth. She was living a life built for applause, not for happiness, and the cost was a version of herself she could barely recognize anymore. It didn't happen all at once. It wasn't a dramatic explosion that everyone could see. No, it was quiet, private, like a slow unraveling no one else noticed. One morning, she woke up and felt a heaviness she couldn't shake. She brushed it off, as she always did. Coffee, smile, push through. But something was different. The ache wasn't just emotional anymore. It lived in her body, in her bones, in the way even her favorite songs sounded hollow. She started missing deadlines at work, something she had never done before. She forgot birthdays, showed up late to dinners, and felt a growing sense of resentment she didn't recognize. The life she had worked so hard to maintain was crumbling at the edges, and no amount of pretending could hold it together anymore. Have you ever felt like you're holding 1,000 pieces together with your bare hands, and you're just too tired to keep squeezing? At first, she blamed herself. Maybe she just needed a vacation. Maybe she needed to sleep more, say thank you less. Maybe, just maybe, it was her fault for not being strong enough. How many times do we shame ourselves for feeling what is only natural? For breaking under a weight no one should carry alone. The real breaking point came on an ordinary Tuesday. She was standing in the kitchen, trying to pack a lunch for work, when she dropped a glass. It shattered everywhere, tiny pieces at her feet. And for some reason, that was it. She just stood there, frozen, staring at the mess, unable to move. Tears filled her eyes, not because of the glass, but because for the first time, she realized she was just as broken. She sat down on the floor, surrounded by sharp fragments, and cried. Not quietly, not politely, but deeply. The kind of cry that comes from years of swallowing pain, years of pretending, years of choosing everyone else. It wasn't just about the life she was living. It was about the life she had abandoned along the way. That afternoon, she knew something had to change. Not a surface-level change, not a new hobby, or a 2-week break. A real, soul-deep change. She didn't need to fix the life she had. She needed to walk away from it before it completely erased her. Have you ever reached a point so deep that you realized the only way out was through yourself? She wiped her tears, stood up slowly, and made herself a silent promise. No more. No more pretending. No more living for applause. No more being everything to everyone while being nothing to herself. It wasn't a decision made out of anger. It was made out of survival. And it would become the decision that saved her. She didn't pack a suitcase. She didn't send a goodbye message to everyone she knew. She didn't post about it on social media. Her leaving wasn't a grand exit. It was quiet. It was internal. She started by pulling away, slowly, almost invisibly. One by one, she stopped answering the calls that drained her, stopped showing up to events that felt more like obligations than celebrations. And for the first time in years, she let the silence be louder than her fear. She left behind the job that once defined her, but now only suffocated her. She stepped away from friendships that survived on guilt rather than love. She stopped explaining herself to family members who only knew how to take, never how to give. Was it terrifying? Absolutely. Every part of her screamed to stay, to apologize, to make herself small again, just to feel safe. But she knew if she stayed, she'd disappear entirely. And this time, she wasn't willing to lose herself anymore. Walking away wasn't glamorous. It was lonely. It was messy. It meant nights spent questioning everything, doubting herself, grieving the life she thought she wanted. Have you ever walked away from a life everyone else applauded, only to feel completely invisible in the process? That's the paradox no one talks about. Healing often looks like loneliness before it looks like freedom. Some mornings, she wondered if she made a mistake. She missed the comfort of being needed, the predictability of routine. But then, she'd noticed something small, like how she no longer woke up with dread gripping her chest, or how she could breathe a little deeper without the weight of constant expectations pressing down on her. Healing wasn't fast, it wasn't linear, but every quiet morning she spent reconnecting with herself became a brick in the new foundation she was building. And through the loneliness, something unexpected started to grow. Clarity. Without the noise of constant demands and false obligations, she could finally hear her own voice again. She realized she didn't have to become someone new. She just had to come home to herself. All the parts of her that she thought were lost, her creativity, her softness, her laughter, they were still there, buried but alive, waiting for her to return. The rebuilding didn't happen overnight. It was slow. It was messy. Some mornings, she woke up with hope burning bright inside her chest. Other mornings, she barely managed to pull herself out of bed. Healing wasn't a straight line. It was a dance of progress and setbacks. But this time, she wasn't chasing perfection. She was chasing herself, her real self, the one she had buried under years of expectations and fear. She started by doing small things that once made her feel alive. Morning walks with no destination. Journaling not to be productive, but to simply listen to the chaos inside her head without judgment. Cooking meals for herself, like she was someone worth celebrating. Have you ever done something so small, yet felt like you were planting the seeds of an entirely new life? That's how she rebuilt, quietly, consistently, one tiny act of self-respect at a time. As her mind cleared, her body followed. The migraines that used to plague her started fading. Her sleep became deeper. The tightness in her chest loosened. It wasn't magic. It was alignment. She was no longer forcing herself into spaces where she didn't belong. No longer living out someone else's idea of who she should be. Her body was healing because her soul was finally allowed to breathe. With time, bigger dreams resurfaced. Ideas she had abandoned years ago came knocking again. And this time, she opened the door. She started painting again. She signed up for a creative writing class she had once been too busy for. She even began dreaming of starting her own business. Something small, something meaningful, something built on her own terms. Have you ever realized that when you clear out the noise, what's meant for you finally has room to find you? And she did it. Not perfectly, not without fear, but she built a new life from the inside out. A life rooted in authenticity, not approval. Today, she doesn't measure her worth by how much she gives away. She measures it by how deeply she honors herself. And in doing so, she found a peace she never thought possible. The kind of peace that doesn't shout, but whispers. You're home. Her new life didn't look like a highlight reel. It wasn't all sunsets, success stories, and perfect Instagram posts. It was real, sometimes messy, always honest. She didn't rebuild to impress anyone. She rebuilt to feel alive again. Every decision she made was rooted in one simple question. Does this honor who I really am? And for the first time, the answer wasn't about others. It was about her. She launched her own small business, not because she wanted to prove something, but because she believed in her own vision. A coaching practice for women who, like her, had forgotten how to put themselves first. She taught them what no one had taught her, that your life doesn't belong to the loudest expectations around you. It belongs to the quiet, persistent voice inside you that whispers, "There's more." Financially, she started thriving, not through grinding herself into dust, but through building something aligned with her heart. Emotionally, she began to attract people who loved her for who she was, not what she could give. Relationships based on authenticity, not obligation. Have you ever felt what it's like to be loved without needing to earn it? Her health transformed too. Morning anxiety faded into calm rituals, meditation, walks, moments of stillness. She no longer needed chaos to feel important. She found beauty in slow mornings, in choosing meals that nourished her, in ending days feeling peaceful rather than depleted. Success, she realized, wasn't about status. It was about freedom. The freedom to be herself without apology. Looking back, she wasn't angry at the life she left behind. She understood it now. Every sacrifice, every tear, every moment of exhaustion had been preparing her for this rebirth. Sometimes we have to lose ourselves to realize we were never truly lost. We were just hidden under layers we didn't choose. And when she finally chose herself, she didn't just change her life. She saved it. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is simply choose yourself. Not because it's easy, but because it's the only way to truly live. And if this story spoke to you, there's another journey waiting for you. The story of a woman who spent her life trying to please everyone until she found the courage to say no and change everything. Click the video on the left and keep walking this path of transformation.